And I will call this meeting of the Bastrop Independent School District order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and that a notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. If you would, please rise for the pledges and a word of prayer. We don't have that, by the way. I was just seeing if y'all would do it. But thank you very much for being here.
We can, yes.
I started this, yes. All right, I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas flag, honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. If you remain standing, I will open us with a word of prayer. Most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together here this evening and giving us an opportunity to conduct school business. Lord, we ask that you please give us wisdom. Please give us guidance. These are some interesting times. Please allow us to have open minds to be good stewards with what all you've provided us and for the children and the staff and the taxpayers. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, moving along to, there's nobody signed up for open forum. Moving along to item number 3, our budget workshop. Our presenter, Mike White, our Chief Financial Officer. Welcome.
Trying to get the video set up. So how have you been? You good? Is it on now? My screens are working just fine. No drugs. And that concludes my presentation. Any questions? All right, that's the only joke, I promise. Serious, okay. So I'm coming to you tonight for our first budget workshop. We've had 3 budget updates. February, March, and April, and wanted to take some time to hone in a little bit on the budget, talk about a number of things that I have listed here. The first of which is the process. Wanted to kind of give you some insight into the work we've been doing behind the scenes, going back to, I'd say as far back as December, January, as we started to work on this year's budget. It feels like once you adopt one budget, you immediately start. It's got to be real still. Nobody move, nobody move. Right. Back when you were the remote control for your parents? Yeah. It can be a real quick meeting. I think I was still in process. So going back to December, January, the middle of the year, we start looking at early indications for next year, student counts, staffing needs, those kind of things. Going to talk about priorities, that things that we prioritize throughout the process. It's a short list because of course the resources we had available were pretty limited, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Key projections, these are things you've probably seen before, but all the things that are key indicators that we want to track, that kind of key inputs, if you will, that could affect the overall original budget and affect us financially moving into next year. And then, of course, areas to watch, much the same. Some of those things that we projected, looking at areas that we want to keep an eye on that could have an impact on us moving forward. Lastly, we have a bullet for board discussion, but I would say this is kind of embedded throughout all the slides. The entire process is for board discussion. So don't wait till the end. If you have questions, let's talk about whatever it is that you'd like to talk about, whether it's process priorities, projections, or areas to watch. So feel free, the point is feel free to interject at any time. So process. So early on we decided to model revenue based on no growth. We were feeling that. We saw the decline in the spring we've brought to your attention. We had a demographic projection in the fall, and then of course we got the confirmation in April that the landscape hadn't really changed. So we've been using a model of no growth. So that's important. That's something to watch there. Chris over there helped us roll up student data so that we could have a good understanding about what staffing levels need to be. And it sounds exactly like what it is. If we had 100 kids, to start the year, we had a certain number of sections at each grade level at each school. You start to move those kids forward and find out who's leaving, who's returning, and then use the data that you have available to determine, based on our ratios, how many teachers we're going to need. We've held one-on-one meetings with principals throughout the spring, that being our chief HR officer and myself, and with some key directors as well. Lots of conversations about this process. Then we identified the needs and the have-tos, and this kind of goes along with what we're going to talk about with our priorities. We started down this road, calling all the principals and directors together to kind of let them know that this wasn't going to be a year that we were going to do a lot of wants. We're going to get to a lot of wants. This wasn't a wish list year. This was a year of necessity, legal requirement, and what we defined as needs. And of course, hope to get some of your input on that as well tonight. We work with most non-campus departments to identify areas they could cut. And we've done this before. We've asked them to cut a few years ago, came back to them again for another 15% reduction. So very lean across the district with regards to non-personnel costs. We received the mobility update that we referred to at our last meeting, and we went through that pretty thoroughly. And based on that and everything we're seeing and feeling and that you're seeing, we're going to use the status quo on enrollment for our budget projection for next year. So, and last but not least, we launched a virtual learning academy in an effort to offer parents additional options, of course, and to compete for those kids and to capture kids that we might, kids of our own we might lose and kids we might never get because we didn't have that kind of option. So that's something that will be a priority throughout this presentation as well to talk about. Yes, ma'am.
Question, make sure I screen into this.
Yeah.
Back on the process, when you were talking with the principals, I know the funding for each campuses, how was that determined as
Yeah.
far as the budget that principals had to use to
Sure.
work with?
Yeah, you'll recall around this time last year, we moved to a more equitable model that was a base amount per student, and then, how many kids you have, and those kids that are in a socioeconomic need, right? Comp ed driven numbers. So, that resulted in some changes. Nobody lost money, but there were definitely some campuses that had additional needs. So we did not change that for this year. I held that constant. We did cut those types of expenses for, departments in this room, right? We led the charge there, but we didn't get to the point where we had to ask principals to cut their allotment. Now, if they have fewer students, of course, then, if we thought they were going to have 700 kids last year and they had 600, I didn't cut their budget. But now that we're starting a new year, they're not going to get funded on 700 students, if that makes sense. And that's been really clearly laid out.
Student data for classroom staffing levels, is it fair to say going into this workshop that it's the same as last year?
The process or
With
the result?
no growth?
Yes.
Yeah, we're going into the same
Yes.
data or staffing levels as last year. We're going into that level this year with this budget.
Yes, more or less. Now,
Right.
where the kids are, what grades and what campuses,
It wasn't
that's the kind of leveling I'm talking
right,
about.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, for sure. And that's something we do every year, but of course it was more critical this year because we knew that, we staffed on, you recall, we built the budget based on 480 students, and we knew there was some room there to be more efficient.
One more, Mike.
Yeah.
On looking at the students for the campuses, does your formula also take in consideration the special needs students or, the students that have to have a little extra? I mean,
Yeah.
does your formula, is it weighted for that? Or, because you're going to
Yeah.
get some reimbursements from the feds, but you still have to spend it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Our formula is unique in that it takes into account socioeconomics and comp ed, which is probably the largest, right up there with special education, right? So many of the grants that we have and some of the state funds are already supposed to supplement, be supplemental resources for those kids. It's quite a bit. We have, that's where a lot of our grant funding comes from, and a lot of our state dollars come from, certain minimums. So I would say the resources those kids need are already well addressed with our spending level. You'll recall we spend significantly more than we get from the state or the Fed. So I would say that it was just an effort to address the obvious, which is that our district is 400 and plus square miles, but it's very different across the district. And so, but I'm open to suggestions moving forward. It just gets a little complicated when you chop up it's the same amount of money, but you start using too many allotments. It gets hard to make sense of for the principals and hard to calculate. So, yeah,
No, keep it simple.
yeah,
And Mike,
it's worked pretty well.
You say identified non-payroll department cuts of 15%.
Yeah,
So just for our understanding, that doesn't mean we're taking resources out of the classroom.
campus
These are not,
departments.
these are not.
So this
not
is
related to
HR and
campus.
finance and communications and, a number of departments. There's some that are difficult. Operations is mostly utilities and repairs. It's hard to find a whole lot of meat on the bone there, but they were one of them as well. Yeah, a lot of Jennifer's departments. There weren't many exceptions, but no, these are non-campus support expenses. What many people might view as overhead, but we know that you got to have them to keep the lights on. So, good questions. Yes, ma'am.
A few years ago, when we were doing this, we cut non-payroll departments pretty hard. Was there any recovery from that? So we're asking to cut an additional 15% off of something that's already been cut, 15 to 20%.
The only thing I would say is that at that time, when we were trying to cut, 8 million out of the budget, we froze some positions and we didn't, replace them that year. We've been able to go ahead and fill those, for example, but no, we didn't give them back the 15% the year after that or the year after that. So they've started with that and then we're cutting more.
Now, obviously, there's, we have to keep the lights on. There's nothing that, nobody's going to be cut to where, we can't operate on a daily basis. I'll say that. We wouldn't do that. But yeah, I think that's the story. That's the story everywhere, really. It's like you're less and less meat on the bone. It's whittled down to the bare bones. And I wish I could say that trend was going to reverse itself, but I imagine it's just going to be more of the same, running leaner and leaner, being stretched thinner. So, but honestly, it's been well received. I think people understand. I think we did a good job of communicating the why, and I wish it wasn't the case. So, good questions. This is good. Anything else on the process? Anything leading up to tonight that you'd like to talk about that, in terms of what's gone into the proposal? Okay. Let's talk about priorities. You're gonna see some big hitters here. These are obviously, I think, the board's priorities in a lot of cases as well. Starting with safety and security, that's something that we'll delve into a little bit later, talking about the plan, the state-approved plan for staffing officers across the district. Special education, while our overall growth has slowed or stopped, our special education population, I would say, it hasn't, and it continues. And this is a phenomenon we're seeing in a number of districts across the state, really probably the country, is the increase in special education needs, right? And we'll talk about a little bit of funding that's associated with that as well. Life skills and behavior, paras, the pay for some of our most amazing staff that have maybe the hardest jobs in the district. If you have any idea of what they do, that is, of course, an easy priority for us. You can't pay them enough. They're hard to find. They're hard to keep. So we made that a priority throughout this process. The final phase of the middle school transitions, a few positions that as we were rolling into being fully fleshed out there with 3 grades at all the 4 middle schools, we had some shared positions and FTEs and some things like that. We went back and really as they fill out, it was very difficult to spread folks across campuses like that. So we've addressed that in this proposal as well. And as you know, we have elementary 10. Feels like we just opened 9, but before we know it, a year after next, we'll have number 10 built. You have to do staffing for that a little bit in advance, right? You have to hire a principal. You have to have some office staff so that you can register students and those kind of things. Those expenses creep into this year, right? Those advanced expenses. So have staffing for that for elementary 10 in next year's budget. Elementary staffing ratios, we talked about the balancing, looking at sections, grades, campuses, those kind of things, and using a 23-to-1 model with a few exceptions that we can talk about as well. Operations, we have a preventative maintenance tech, it's a mouthful, a child nutrition equipment tech, and additional custodians for our new square footage. So 3 as we roll out and continue to grow, at least in footprint and square footage that we needed to do as well. And then a successful pilot of our virtual offering, that was a priority we've talked about. We're in the early stages, but ensuring that that's a success. We want kids to want to be a part of that. We want that to be something that they thrive in and is a good thing. So making sure that's successful is a priority. And then lastly, compensation. This will always probably be on the list. We've talked about pay for certain positions, but overall compensation. You've seen inflation in the last few years has really hit us all at home, and so always front of mind for our superintendent and board as well. So any questions about the list of priorities that we put together here? Feel free to give put on that as we go throughout the presentation. These are some of the specifics related to compensation we wanted to share to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that went into the proposed budget. We took the life skills and behavior paras and moved them up a pay grade. So that's, that's something that's a great deal for them, And again, they're not paid enough even now. So certified teachers will see an increase of 1% of midpoint. That's across the board with a few exceptions. We had starting pay increase about $250, up from $57 to $750. And then, as you know, this is going to be the second year of House Bill 2 with the $2,500 and $5,000 raises for teachers with 3 years or more or 5 years or more. Right? I know that's a mouthful. So the reason we had to make a distinction here, and we couldn't just do across the board raises, is just because as those teachers move up, we wanted to make sure that it made sense that somebody was on year 3 next year and somebody that was already, a new year 3 person from outside and somebody that rolled up to their 3rd year were in line. And so we had to do a little bit of tweaking there to make sure it made sense in terms of our salary schedule. And then for all other staff, except for DOI, they got their own part of the comp plan, their own compensation, and their carrot is getting to the end and becoming a full-fledged teacher, as always. But everyone else would get a 1% of midpoint raise, right? So depending on where you are and what schedule you're on, every schedule has a midpoint, right? And we're keying off of that. Everybody would shift up on their particular scale equally. So when we say 1% of midpoint, that's what we mean. Yeah.
Well, this is a compensation example going forward here. With this particular example, does that assume no growth in revenue with this example, or no fund balance?
These things were baked into our balanced budget, the first scenario. And when we get to that, I'll kind of circle back to your question and make sure that we're on the same page. Yeah.
What is the dollar amount for all this? $1,200,000, $1,500,000, $2 million?
Well, let me see. Let me add it up here because the total raises were 1.1. I didn't break out just teacher raises specifically, so that's something I can give you. I apologize. Overall, it's 1.1. The life skills and behavior paras. Do you have that number handy? 110. Yeah, I was going to say low hundreds. So yeah, those are built into the current year budget, and of course, these are decisions that you guys can chew on tonight, give us some guidance, and see what your priorities are. But we'll get to a little bit more of the bottom line, if you will, the price tag on some of these things coming up here soon. Okay. So we wanted you guys mostly to see what those early teacher steps look like, because we don't want anybody to say, well, you said $631 and it's more or less. I just didn't want to, trying to be as transparent as possible, not only for the board, but also for the community and staff. So, okay. Moving forward, these key projections, no big surprises here with enrollment in particular. We've talked about that at length. We're going to continue to target 94% attendance. That's something that we've made some ground on, and is a good thing. Let's talk about special education funding for a second. So there's a lot of moving parts here. They're moving to an entirely new model for funding special education, right, and reporting on all the students and their services. So the previous model was a placement-based model, more or less. Are you in the life skills classroom? Are you in a regular ed classroom? Are you over here in the receiving speech services, those kind of things, like basically where you were as opposed to what you were doing, what services you were receiving, right? So when they talk about an intensity-based model, they might view speech as the lowest intensity, right? I think there's 8. If that's intensity level 1 all the way to residential placement, right? So somebody with severe special education needs would be in a different intensity-based model or intensity level. So the kicker is we're going to have to report both the old model and the new model come this fall. I apologize, sir. My condolences. Thankfully, they moved snapshot up, so we just lost about 3 weeks. And the reason they're going to do that is they don't have a model for taking the money they allocated for special education and distributing it. So they're going to capture all this data based on how we're doing it, where these kids are being served, I mean, not where, how they're being served, and then come up with a formula on the fly. And we'll find out how much we get of this $250 million pot after the year's over. And that sounds amazing. So, because the overall pot is 4%, is a 4% increase, we're estimating 4%. We're all looking at each other trying to figure out, are we going to come out, is our piece of the pie going to be bigger than our proportional share, smaller? Right now I think 4% is conservative, but it's just a big unknown. I mean, that's $600,000 for our budget, so it's not nothing. It's an important, set aside, and it's a good thing, right? But it's the strangest thing not to know until the year is over. So we're going to be very diligent to report every kid, every service provided, and get our share and report back to the board later. But it was one of the highlights of flow-through funding we actually got under House Bill 2. So unfortunately, it's very complicated and a little bit of a mystery, which will kind of be a theme here throughout the evening. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I've got,
Yes, ma'am.
on this new on the new model, different model, I'm going to assume you all have got training on how to identify the students and how to identify them, how to document them, and
I'm
such as that?
assuming that we are very diligent about that, right?
Okay,
Specifically, Derek could speak to that, or maybe Jennifer, but this is a big change. So anytime,
Yeah.
I'll give TA credit for this. Anytime there's a change this big, if they have the guidance and and the training materials, sometimes it's a little later than you would like, but if they want us to report this by October 3rd? There's a lot to be done between now and October 3rd. So we'll see how it rolls out, but just put those guys in your prayers. It's going to be a tough start of school.
what would be the additional, is there any, are we going to have to upgrade any of the equipment that we're capturing this data? Are we talking more man-hours?
Definitely more man-hours.
Maybe at the very
I mean,
beginning, or is this?
I'll tell you what I'm hearing, and I can't speak for, their boots on the ground. I'll let her speak as well, but the sheer man-hours to report it both ways, and the number of kids, think about how many different students you have that are enrolled in special education, right? It's a lot. If you spend 10 minutes on each student, you do the math, it's going to be significant. I don't know, and this is the year they moved up the deadline as well, so it's more to do with less time, so it's significant man-hours.
Are we talking, how will we pay the overtime for the personnel involved? Are they exempt, non-exempt? You just kind of give them the whole week out?
It's a mixed bag.
following?
Most of the leadership is exempt,
Okay.
so it's not as much a factor of overtime. But we might have to flex their schedule. Might have to. Ultimately, it's like the audit or the budget or anything else that we have due. You burn the midnight oil and you get it done. Exactly. I don't think we've worked out the reality of that yet.
Isn't this, we've had partnerships in the past with maybe some graduate programs. Do we still have those available to help with and assist with this process?
That I couldn't answer.
Two lenses that we're looking at here. One is our same processes and procedures that we've had for identifying, for serving our kids. None of that changes. We've got great people that we train up that do everything from the assessments to determine their interventions and all of that. I think with all of this, the unknown that comes into play is how we're going to report it in the system. And so it's really hard for us to say at this moment, how many hours that could be, how intensive this is. We've got things where we can mass upload data in there, but it's hard to really know until they tell us exactly what that looks like. So once that happens, then we can make some determinations Because we've got people that are really good in Skyward, and we've got people within our special programs, but we've just got to see what the state wants us to do, and then we can determine how best we can get it done, because that's what we're really good at, is determining how best can we get this done and get it in the system the right way, because it does impact our funding.
So it sounds like the data's there, the reporting, the process, the data's there. The data's there. It's just the unknown is what format the state,
What format? Because they
you
add,
need to turn it into.
they add new things in all the
That's gonna take
time.
the time, right. The
Yeah.
data entry, spreadsheets, things like that.
But it
Yes.
will be a little bit, it'll be a lot more difficult, because whereas before, you might have documented that we have 10 students in this life skills classroom, now you're gonna have to say, for student A, 10 minutes was this, 15 minutes was this, 30 minutes was this, we required this equipment. It's for every single student that's in whatever placement they are, whether it's resource, inclusion, life skills, all of that's gonna have to be done. So that's the intensity. So there will be all the old data that we are used to gathering every year into one system, all this new intensity of service data. We know how we're serving the kids, but documenting it in that way and uploading all that data, that's not something that we've been asked to do in the past.
Yes, even in like the data they needed to pay out the teacher retention allotment, the 2,500 and 5,000, wasn't that many fields, but it was a significant change. I mean, the software changes, the training to ensure you're doing it right, the accountability, it's just another submission, another deadline for Chris and his staff, and it affects everything. So I definitely want you guys to be aware of that, because it's going to be a big thing for this year. So anything else, any other questions about the assumptions, key projections? Okay. So areas to watch. This is no secret, but the introduction of these education savings accounts, AKA vouchers, for the first time in Texas history here, is going to impact us all, and we're all trying to figure out to what extent, right? How do we all come out in the wash on that? So one of the things that they released, I've been tracking the number of applicants of students that live in Bastrop ISD. Last count, that number is 543. What's more interesting is that without a lot of fanfare, they included a second piece of data in recent days. The number of applications of students who are actually in our school system, right? And that's something that was definitely, we didn't think it was 543. It's 123 applications, and indications are that was for students from 24, 25. So that's a very interesting data point that we want to watch. Now, that doesn't mean that might mean that 0 of those applications are approved. It doesn't mean your application is necessarily made the cut, and we'll talk about that here in a second. It just means that of all the applications, 123 previously attended here. So this gets back to what applications have been approved. So you're starting to see news stories come out. Parents are being notified of who has been awarded those dollars. Most of the applications that have been awarded so far are from Tier 1, right? Those special education students, right? They were at the top of the list, priority list. And we talked a lot about the priority tiers before. It starts with special education, of course, then the rest are mostly socioeconomic, right? From, those with the most resources or least resources to the most compared to the poverty level. So Tier 1 with their siblings, right? So if you're approved, your siblings are approved. That was the lion's share of what's made up the approved applications and most of the $1 billion allotment. They're getting a little bit into Tier 2, I think. Should see something released here soon. And that's those students that are based on socioeconomics. They make less than 200% of the poverty level, right? So that's where it starts. And so I want to say that might be somewhere around $80,000, but don't hold me to that. So that's where we're at now. So, and then we start to look at pre-K and kindergarten. A large number of the applications, probably the leading the pack is pre-K and kindergarten, right? And that makes sense. Parents want to start off their kids, at wherever, private school, homeschool, whatever they applied for. So we're going to be watching closely what our pre-K numbers and kindergarten numbers look like moving forward. And it's not so much that one of our parents, that we had in pre-K or kindergarten moves or, goes to a private school. It's also, the potential loss, folks that might have attended our pre-K and started in our system that, we'll never capture because they chose to maybe take their kids to work in Austin and stop by, somewhere off the toll road and go to a private school or a pre-K center. So for me, I thought that was an interesting thing to watch, the proliferation of offerings at the lowest levels. The virtual pilot, we've talked a lot about this so far, rightfully so. It is a significant priority for us because, and I think you'll see this play out across the state. I'm hearing a lot of districts looking at this as well for the same reasons, which is just like when districts started considering open enrollment, it was to compete for kids, right? Because our funding that we receive is based on our students. We built schools for students, we staffed, we do all these things for our kids, and then, they go next door. And we have to either, we're Austin and we have to shutter campuses, or we have to adjust accordingly because we're losing kids, they're filtering out. So we're going to start a pilot with up to 200 students, this next school year. Interesting to see how that goes. We've opened it up, starting to get applications. So it's been a little slow so far, and hoping by the deadline that we fill up that cap and make this a successful launch. Now, one of the things we don't know is, by the end, how much of it will be internal versus external demand. Essentially, how many kids of our own that are currently in our ISD in a traditional school are going to want to go virtual versus those that are outside that maybe they go to Hallsville online school or, College Station or one of these other schools, around Kilgore and all over the place that have these offerings, that maybe they have some connection here. Maybe they used to attend here. Maybe they want to play, they want to be a part of what we have going on. So that's something really critical to watch. Given that we don't know exactly how this plays out, staffing is going to be a little bit of guesswork there. We might want to make sure that as we enroll those students, we know what that looks like. We're going to staff accordingly. So we may come back with an update in future months about that. A couple other things, attendance reporting. This is new territory for TEA as well, especially at this scope and at this level, right? If they have 1,000 school districts go out and create a virtual program at some point, there's going to have to be pretty robust accounting procedures, right? We have a student accounting handbook now that's, that could break your ankle if you've dropped it on your foot, but we don't have that kind of guidance yet for what it looks like. How do you take attendance for a kid that might only be here part of the day, and how does that differ from a traditional model? And then, if there are any funding differences, and I don't know that there are, what does that look like? How are we going to fund these kids, right? So there's a lot of this to be developed, right? We're kind of at the start of, kind of a very small piece of the pie, small piece of the landscape that I think is going to change quite a bit in coming years. So, any questions about that?
When you said that this is all new, this is, a lot of unknowns, I thought the virtual learning has, and maybe Priscilla can add to this, I thought this was something that other districts have done. So, yes, it's still new, but why hasn't TEA got hold of it and said this is how, hey, this is how we're going to fund it, this is how the attendance, is it?
So I think for me, this is me speaking, 1,000-foot view, if you zoom out, the proliferation of this, basically around COVID, right, had some offerings, including the community that I came from. They were in there post-COVID, and they were grandfathered in. They were, I'll say, a small subset of districts. I think less than 10. It's pretty small. We use those examples because there's not that many of them. So if you go from 10 to 500 or 1,000, and it's not those few that are grandfathered in that have this, that have their own system, the scale is just going to be so different. So it's not brand new as an offering. It was just so limited, and it's about to be so widespread, and I'd say it's still relatively in its infancy.
So the legislators didn't think about this might expand?
I don't think they thought about what's coming, no.
Okay.
But it did come out of the legislative session that allowed districts the flexibility to offer virtual schooling.
They
And-
just
And so
didn't quite plan for it.
because of similar to not only for BISD, we want to make different options available to our families. In some respects, it is that we need to make different options available to our families. So, but like what you heard with some of the things that we're still waiting on related to the high-intensity model of funding, and we don't know all the rules yet because they haven't put them out. They also haven't put out, they've told us that it's coming sometime this summer, we expect, how we will be funded for attendance. If there's going to be a time when attendance has to be taken, we think that there's not, like they can do it anytime during the day, but I won't be surprised if TEA doesn't come and say, okay, well, now here are some additional concerns or rules that you need to follow.
No, I mean, I realize it's not on your part, not on the district's part of the unknown. It's the guidance that's not being provided.
I mean, the landscape is changing quickly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're just trying to adapt like everyone else, And I think the advent of school choice and, kind of opening up a new horizon with that, I think goes in line with, parents are going to make choices. And if this is one of the choices, we want to be there, and we want to compete like we do with everything else. So it's good questions. All right, so for our frame of reference, I'm starting with where we were at last month, last week, one of those. A base scenario, 1% pay increase. This had one officer. It did include the transfer in from the STARS fund, and was a balanced budget. We also propose an alternate scenario of 2% of midpoint, just for a frame of reference, what that would look like. Every 1% is about $1.1 million. This holds everything else constant, so that's just A and B, with that being the only difference. We have some scenarios to talk about here in a second that would change that. And so rather than have A, B, C, D, a whole slew of them, we're just going to talk about some ideas and some costs. And then together we can kind of develop what might be an alternate scenario, or maybe we'll coalesce around one of the ones on the last slide. But if you'll just let me get through this next part, I think you'll see where we're going with this. So one of the things we want to talk about to start more of a board discussion, or allow a focus to be on where we go from here based on board's input, wanted to list the strategic priorities front and center. These are things that have kind of led us and been front and center for us really with everything we do, but you'll see they all kind of weave themselves in nicely with some of the staffing choices we've made, and safety and security, and the students with special needs. That of course goes to our culture and our collaborative practices across the district, and of course student success and well-being being at the forefront of all those decisions. So moving forward from there, I want to talk about fund balance. We currently have 4.2 months of fund balance, right? We presented a budget scenario as directed, and I think as the board has expected, it's been our standard over the years is to have a balanced budget. That's more challenging this year to come to you with that based on the lack of growth. I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again. You guys are board members on a district that has grown at about 3.4% for 40 years, 50 years. It's almost uncanny how steady the growth has been. Right as rain, like the sun coming up, we've had growth. Well, I promise I didn't cause it, but when I got here, the growth stopped, right? And so that's a challenge, and that's a challenge you're seeing from some other districts. The glass half full is here. We think it's more an anomaly, right? It's just kind of a pause to the growth as opposed to a stop. some of our built-out peers, some of our, maturing districts, it's never coming back, right? Those campuses that are closing those districts that are closing campuses, those campuses are never probably going to reopen, right? Because they're never going to grow into them. They not repurpose them, but that's a different reality for us, right? So we're not having those conversations. So we're at 4.2 months. We know we have some safety and security needs, right? That's why we tried to make some progress there by including at least an officer. Our good cause exception plan filed last year calls for adding 3 officers, right? So from 1 to 3. And if we add 3, we're going to need to include a sergeant, right? We're going to have to, there's only so many folks people can supervise, so it kind of goes along with it. So the cost of that as a standalone item is a little over $300,000, right? We know that the teacher scale on the back end, particularly, when I mean back end, from 10 to 20, it kind of trails behind. It's not as competitive, right? So we wanted to, bring that forward and as an idea as well. That cost $125,000, not necessarily to solve that problem, but to work towards it, right? To make progress on becoming more competitive, right? That would be a little bit of a longer term fix. And then adjusting minimum pay grades for our lowest paid paras. To be in 2026 and to have folks that don't even make $15 an hour, when Buc-ee's and these other places are in their low 20s, it's very difficult, and it's something that we always want to bring to the conversation and be mindful of. So this is simply taking those folks that are below $15 an hour and bringing them up there. Now, that's the first of several steps there if we went down that road. Because then you might have to adjust others, you'd have to do some other adjustments as well and make sure there's some parity between certain pay grades. But for now, step 1, if we were to do it, would be $100,000. The reason we brought these 3 specific numbers to you, if we were going to entertain dipping into fund balance, we wanted you to have the cost of those kinds of things, or anything else that you wanted to, any other information you needed about that. But this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. It really comes down to the board is going to adopt this budget at the end of the day. This is going to be your budget. It's not going to be Mike's budget, right? Or administration's budget. This is one of the few things you're charged with specifically. So we're trying to balance our charge of a balanced budget and being great stewards of taxpayer dollars, which, by the way, I'm always a fan of that. Because you start using fund balance to live off of. If you do that it starts to really spiral a little bit, so you have to be really careful. Hayes ISD is trying to unwind that spiral. They started down that path and found one day woke up and their fund balance was very little, right? And so that's exactly what they're doing. So we have to balance that between, with some of the needs we have, with, officers maybe being at the front of that list. So I'm going to pause and see what questions you might have or what input you might have for administration as we move forward and we look at adopting this budget here in a couple of months.
Mike, our fund balance, it's part of our investment pool, isn't it? And it's earning interest right now?
Most of it's in investment pools, yes.
Right. So 3 to 4% it's earning at this point.
Yeah, these days is about 3.6%.
Okay.
It's about $2 million in interest revenue that is in our budget.
That's just from our fund balance portion, or is that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this 530,000 roughly would, for one, on our fund balance, were recommended to be how many months? 3.5, 3?
Well, TEA, the standard they use for the first rating is at least 3.
3. So if we take $500,000 out, or 530,000, that puts us at what, 4.1 months, 4 months?
Yeah, it wouldn't make a big difference in that number for now, yeah. I can give you the exact calculation here in a second when I can do some quick math.
Now, you said that the interest being earned on the investment, that's already been included in the
Yes,
budget?
and it always
Okay,
has been.
okay,
So,
okay.
now, not the money, not bond funds or debt service or anything, but just the general fund. Yeah, we have a healthy fund balance, and one of the, the extra rewards, the cherry on top is you earn more interest on that, right? But you have to be careful on living off of it because
Right.
when I was at Highland Park, it ran up from 100,000 to 2.2 million, back to 100,000 in 2 years. So, but it's settled in. It's pretty, it got as high as, a couple years ago, it was over 5%. That's pretty much the highest I've ever seen. But it's settled in at the upper threes. So, and we have increased fund balance quite a bit in the last 2 fiscal years. So that's a different story. 24 months ago, we're probably at, 3 months. I have to go back and look, but, so yeah, the real discussion is how do we balance these needs against a fund balance, knowing that while this year was difficult, next year is going to be more difficult, right? Barring any windfall from the legislative session, which I will say, my counsel to you is I've never seen them go back to back with significant investments in public ed funding. Typically, they kind of act as though they've scratched that itch, they've dealt that, and then we expect this to go away for a while. Well, what they did this last session didn't even get us close to where we were before COVID. So it's not as simple as that, and that's why districts are still struggling. Even with the infusion, half of it went to teachers, rightly so, great thing. But $4 billion did not touch the needs that exist across the state. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Mike, what is our total budget for safety and security without this additional 304,000? Are we still at like this 3 million?
Can I grab my computer, since this is a workshop anyways? I can give you that number if I can just grab it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I have prior year and current, but I don't know if it's changed much since.
Yeah, I want to say it's 2.5 million-ish, but if you give me a second, I can have all the answers to these questions.
And I had some questions last couple of days on this good cause exemption plan filed. Chief, correct me here, we currently have 21 officers?
We have 2 on patrol.
Okay, but to satisfy the plan, we need 30.
Yes.
So we're adding 3, we're still not to 30. Just to give example why this is a suggestion, these 3 things all go towards payroll coming out of fund balance, all 3. But it's just a thought there too.
I think we're used to referring to the shortfall on funding for safety and security, but the overall budget is closer to 3.1 million. We do get, for the sake of full disclosure, we do get $700,000 to $800,000 in safety and security money. They have put a little bit of money into that, but of course, our costs have gone up, to staff at the level we're staffing at to meet the requirements, significantly more than that. So 3.1 million, little under 10%.
Okay, and then there were 2 categories I wanted to ask you about as well.
Sure.
So our guidance, counseling, and evaluation services, as well as social work services, those 2 categories are lower in the current year in terms of budget. What do you project for those 2 categories for counseling and social work
And
services?
what are you looking for?
So I'm looking at your general fund expenditures.
The monthly financial statement?
Yeah.
Okay, let me
And
pull.
so the final budget is listed here for prior year. And then, so yes, so what, are we
So-
making any adjustments to those positions
I wasn't here,
or
okay, I wasn't here
categories?
for the prior year. I will say a couple of things were going on. We were doing some budget corrections. Some of the FTEs we had previously weren't always correctly budgeted in the right spot. And things like social workers and counselors are tricky because especially coming out of ESSER funding and other things, they could easily and might have been coded to a special, they might have been there, but coded differently. They might have been in a grant or an ESSER. And so it's kind of difficult to always compare apples to apples because you guys are only seeing the general fund view. So if it was previously coded elsewhere, it might look new, or if it was, or vice versa. You see what I'm
But
saying?
okay, so I guess for Diana? We don't have any change in FTE for those positions, or are we taking anything away from those?
From social workers, no, and then we actually added some counseling services to the middle schools to
And
make
we're
them
not
whole.
adding any other mental health supports at all, like social workers? or-
No.
Okay, so no, okay, thank you.
So Mike, on this use of the fund balance, you had a couple of slides before, you had the two, the 1% and the 2%. Where does this 500,000 fall into play? Or
It
is
doesn't. It
okay,
doesn't. So I wanted to give that as a baseline,
Okay,
scenario A and B, and then off to the side, what we're calling a menu of choices, right? I didn't want to have too many scenarios.
right.
So you could take either one of those, depending on what your feeling was about compensation, and then the 300, the 125, and the 100 as possibilities. But yeah, you would add those numbers to the
To
deficit.
those, okay,
That 304 is above and beyond the extra officers, not the one, doesn't include the one that we already had in there.
right, okay.
So,
Or the whole 500,000?
no, this is all extra. This is
Yeah.
all above and beyond that,
Yeah,
so,
and some change, okay.
yeah.
Mike, for the 3 officers, when we talk about that number,
Yeah.
that's strictly payroll, or does that include equipment and that kind of stuff as well?
That's a good question, because the price tag would be higher, right? If we know, I'll say this, if I know that this is the direction we're going to go, and it's going to be in the proposed budget, we're going to work together really quickly to go procure the vehicles and the vests and the guns and all the accoutrement, if you will, that an officer needs. We're going to try to get that by 6:30 so I can put it in this year's budget, right? Because next year is going to be leaner than this year. I'd rather go ahead and pull those expenses forward, receive on them, so I can take off some of the burden, because that first year of adding those positions, there's a lot of other non-personnel costs that go along with it. So that, yeah, I appreciate you touching upon that. So,
I'd like to add something about safety and security that Chief and Mike and I were talking about just today. So there is also a new proposed rule, I guess that we would call it, that districts would be required to have a peace officer at any extracurricular activity or any school event that had 500 people in attendance. And it's recommended if there, or I'm sorry, I should say, it's suggested that you even have them, even if there's 250. So it's unclear whether extracurricular means a UIL type of an event, like a game or a fine arts competition, but the language is also school event. So that could be math and science night at an elementary school. Also, TEA has said that it won't cost the state any more money, but it will cost districts more money. But districts can use the safety and security allotment that they were given out of the last legislative session. Well, as Mike just reported, we've already used that money because we spend 3.1 million, which is well beyond what the state provides. So this is going to be not only additional expense, but there are going to be additional officers needed to cover all of these events if this rule goes forward, and we're hearing that they feel confident that it will go forward. There's an opportunity for us to testify May the 4th, and we will probably, some of us go and testify, not necessarily to say, we have officers at lots of these events anyway, right? We choose to do that, but to mandate it and not fund it. Fine to do it, but fund it.
Yeah, I will say this, is that, when you say that, Dr. Lee, just about any event I have gone to, an officer has been there.
Yes.
And it's just, the interactions that our officers have with the kids and the programs is incredible. And creates a good foundation for those kids, and these officers, you know. And so I like the ideal. I do not like the ideal being an unfunded mandate, but I do appreciate what's going on now.
Absolutely.
And Chief, do all officers have to have a vehicle? They can't drive their personal vehicle to a campus if they're working that campus for the day and then go home?
So the downside of that would be is if they have an arrest and we have to pull somebody from somewhere else. The other part is our vehicles, we buy them used. And so it's really, we keep them for about 10 years. So when you look at it, you amortize our vehicles, we have about 6,000 of them per year. And it's also, to me, I'll just be very front, it's a billboard that sits out front.
Right.
That says, we're here. And so I just see it as that.
Gotcha.
That was, it doesn't necessarily have to be our event. It could be somebody that, you know, is using our facilities, or it could be anything. It doesn't stipulate, you know, if there's, somebody has their own prom, you know, at the PAC, or they have a competition, or they're at little dribblers or something. Hitting 500 is not hard, as you know, especially 250. So it's just, we're wary of the cost, you know, and of course, you know, that's a number of events his staff would have to cover, so, and they're already spread thin, so.
Your scenario too on the budget with the 2% increase, that extra percent from 1 to 2 would have to come out of fund balance also?
This scenario.
This
right here,
1.1 would come out on top of these other three if you went
Yes.
with 2%.
That holds those other ideas off to the side. That 1.1 would be deficit. And that is with the transfer in of the $1.9 million and $2.4 million one-time infusion from a prior tax year that we audited 2022, and we're getting, you know, a nice little amount there, but I can't, it's not something I can count on in the future. So to say that balanced budget there is kind of, I mean, it's propped up a little bit with some things that are going in our favor. And I just always want to be completely transparent with you guys, so you know kind of everything that I know about what it went into this. And so, you know, whatever decisions we make this year, I just caution you, come next year, that will be the starting point for the same discussion next year when we don't have those funds. And I know what your expectations are. I know, you know, the charge you've given us, and we just want to make sure you have almost like a 2-year view of our budgetary outlook. So.
You're saying that the 1.9 million is a one-time? from
Yes,
the-
ma'am,
from-
that's
from
the
The refunds, or?
non-committed fund balance. I mean, I think there's some assets that make up the rest of the fund balance, but that's the cash. It happens to be the amount of our deficit, very close to it. So, yeah, that's, I wish that I had that. I wish that was an annual transfer I could make, but unfortunately, there's not enough but to do it the one time.
And also this 1% of the midpoint pay increase, this will be the first year we haven't contributed or put back to our fund balance?
The 1% you said? Well,
No, I mean, just this year, this coming up. I mean, in 26,
Right.
25, 26, we're not gonna put any money back into fund balance at the end of the,
So the year we're currently in now?
Yes.
Okay. You know, I think it's gonna be about break even, if I'm honest with
Okay.
you. We lost, and that's with budgeting for 400 kids that we never had. So right off the top, we lose $4 million, but counting, you know, vacancies that didn't get filled and being as lean as we can, I think with, we don't spend every dollar that's budgeted. I mean, those little pieces add up. And so my projection is it'll be about break even, which is glass half full considering we lost 400.
yeah. And just a little institutional notch for Ms. Armstrong and Priscilla and Josh, and probably Chris as well. I know with Kelly and Mix, but I think we started possibly over 9 years ago. I may be off on that number by 1 or 2 years, but trying to rebuild back up the fund balance. So we were very disciplined, working very hard to get it to where we needed it to be in order for one, to be able to go out for bonds, for
Yeah.
constructions, things like that, but also get to that 3 months or whatever the number they said. So it's nice to know that we are past that. So nice to know that there is some availability there, but you're right, we don't want to start a domino effect of being like other schools and, start bleeding it dry.
Yeah, doing some quick math here. Yeah, about 12 million, about $11.8 million per month of operating expenditures. So we have $50 million in fund balance. So just to give you some perspective about what 1 month of fund balance is at our current level is it's about $12 million. So these don't seem like huge numbers when you compare that, but here's what happens. -1 becomes -4, becomes -9. It kind of gets a little exponential. It doesn't just go 1, 1, 1. It doesn't. It's typically not how it goes because, you give raises and then next year you give the raise on the raised amount and then it's like that. That's how the math works. So.
But I want to go back to something that you said earlier, Mike. We do anticipate that this year and next year, and our demographers kind of verified this for us, that this is what they're anticipating also, that these are the couple of lean years. And then we're expected to start growing again. And, we're seeing lots of development still continuing to happen in the city and in the county. Heard about more of it today. So we do think that this is a short term, so I don't anticipate that we're going to every year be having to pull money out of fund balance.
Well, just some thoughts of what we would, if we pulled some out, even with giving a 1% raise, I mean, and everything, like we said, is going towards compensation. We're not going backwards, having to hold it the same, we're not having to cut positions.
Right.
And
I mean, the only positions we cut, we're balancing teaching FTEs based on student numbers. I don't view that as a cut. Actually added a few positions, that were based on need. I mean, safety, security, SPED, a few operations, but, yeah.
So Mike, I guess you can go and teach our students now a class about compounding interest and how my investment, if it compounds, will double in 10 years and that kind of thing as well, right?
Yeah, deficits compound too. I assume that's what you're referring to. Yeah, and to reiterate, I like exactly what Dr. Lee said. We're weathering the storm, right? Other folks are staring at a barren landscape. Well, that's not what we have. We have a storm. Storms pass, right? We have all the same indicators that led us to believe we were going to get 480 kids, right? And so this is a little unique, and I think in our history, we'll get back on track, and it'll get a little simpler. It's simpler to budget with growth. You have additional funds for positions, teachers, resources, programs, raises, And I hate that I'm the first guy that gets up here and, or I know in recent years it's been tough, but I think we set ourselves up in a good situation, this board, with your leadership over the last 5 years or so, maybe going all the way back to 9 years ago. You guys, I know in around 2017 or so, there was a challenge. The financials weren't as strong. Our first rating wasn't as strong, but all the indicators since then have been all green lights and all accomplishments that we should be proud of. So we're weathering the storm better than just about anybody.
Mike, you mentioned that we had a menu. We had these 3 items there.
When I said menu, I just meant some
Are
choices.
there other things on the menu here?
Anything's on the menu. I was telling Lee earlier, you guys can have anything you want. You just can't have everything you want. And ultimately, I got $142 million to spend. You just tell me how to spend it. That's essentially what you're doing, right? When we approve a budget, it's a list of our priorities. And so, yeah, your input's helpful in that because ultimately this is something that we do together and that you own and approve. So we want to be a resource to you in that process. So I want to make sure all your questions are answered and that you really understand what our options are.
Mike, the very last one, it says adjusting for the lowest paid paras, that 100K.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of slides back, we were, I think one more. Anyway, you mentioned that we're going to give the paras that jump. Are they different?
They
Are we
are,
talking different, different personnel this last?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
The jump that we're talking about with that 100,000 is to increase our starting pay to 15. And the other is to bump up life skills and behavior 1 pay grade.
Okay, okay, but there's, okay, got it.
I was gonna try to, health assistant, teacher assistant, STARS assistant, worker in the daycare, at least in 25, 26, those are some of the,
Those are
Those
some
are
of the
those are some of the examples
okay.
of those that
Some of
are
the
under
paras,
$15
okay.
an hour.
Okay,
So, it's our paraprofessional salary range.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at our comp plan, and you can see that at the top, it starts with as low as 1407.
got it.
And we want to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's not a quick fix. That's a long-term commitment, multi-year commitment, rather. So,
Mike, have you looked at, the rate of inflation in our, just, well, state of Texas or Austin metro area as well?
well, it's a good question. It plays a big part in our transportation agreement, right? The inflation factor there. And what they pulled, the latest CPI, and I want to say it's based out of, I think it's based on the Houston CPI for some reason, or maybe that's I don't know the history of it, but it was 3% this year. So the days of astronomical inflation are probably behind us, but you got to account for that 3%. 3% on our transportation agreement is $300,000, right? So.
Well, and 3% inflation with a 2% increase for our teachers doesn't make up the difference for them.
No, yeah, and we're well aware of that. That's what's so shameful about it. Since 2019, across the board, we've seen inflation close to, I think, 20%, something like that. Lost about 20 or 25% of our purchasing power. That plays out here. That plays out in those teachers' homes. With the bills they pay. There's no part of this that it doesn't touch, and so, I'm hoping those that got the 2,500 and 5,000, that was definitely a step forward. Unfortunately, it didn't impact everyone. We did give I want to say it was 5% for the paraprofessionals last year for certain pay grades. Not administrators and otherwise, but if you look back at last year, that's something we committed to as well, but still not there. We're still not where we want to be. And those folks make, the least. So,
Mr. Dillon, you asked earlier about other menu choices. We put some money in to adjust those 10 to 20-year teachers, but it's working towards adjusting them. If we really adjusted them, it would be, I think we were talking today, this is like step 1 of 7. We're doing 1/7 of what we would need to do. To fully adjust them, it would be that 125 times 7 to really fix that section.
Yeah.
So that we keep our more experienced, or attract our more experienced veteran teachers. And the same thing with this $100,000 adjustment. That just gets the paras who aren't making 15 to making 15, but it doesn't include adjusting somebody who's already making 15, who maybe has worked for us for 5 years, and now somebody new's coming in and making 15. So, but it's a start. It's one step, but at some point we would need to fix those other things.
yeah, to give you a frame of reference, on the back half of our teacher pay, we're at, I think, 93% of market in some spots. So if we give 1% towards that, we got 7% to go, right? And so what we're proposing is that's how we got to the 1/7. But I'd rather attempt to do some great things and not just be able to do everything we want to do, but make progress than otherwise. But again, it comes at a cost, and so that's kind of where we get back to, what do you guys want to see? I hope to propose a budget in May and then adopt in June. Typically, there's not many changes from that point, right? It's because you don't want to make changes all the way up to adoption. So I'm hoping for some guidance, if possible. And we may not be there yet. We do have May to work through some of that, you know, what are your thoughts, you know, on what you want to see in May?
I'll start.
Okay.
And then let me just confirm something, though. You said our fund balance is about 50 million. And monthly, 11.8, 12 million. thereabouts.
Annually, yeah. That's yes,
month.
1 month of operating expenditures, I
month.
said, was 11.8 million.
11.8.
Yeah.
To do a 2% and the three items that were listed here,
Mhm.
it's 1.7 thereabouts.
Sure.
That would bring us, our fund balance down to 48.
Sure.
We're still at 4 months fund balance at that point.
I'll do the math real quick for you, now that I have the computer. Yeah, 4.05.
So, and we're at 4.2 right now, so we'd lose a little bit on that, but, you know, my guidance, and I can't speak for the entire board, everybody's gonna have their own opinion, but would be to do that, because I'm gonna have a hard time looking a teacher in the eye saying, I can only give you 1%, you know,
Yeah.
or, I mean,
I get it.
no, inflation's 3%. I mean, what groceries are you not gonna buy that month because of that? And so, my preference would be to do the 2% with these additional things.
So basically, next year, you're going into a 1.6, 1.7 deficit on the new budget.
No, sir.
Just
No, we-
if we approve this, plus the 4 million?
Yeah, I want to be clear on this. Think about the budget as a 2-year budget for now. Normally, we wouldn't, every budget year stands alone. This time, because there's 2 one-time items that are factoring in that, if it weren't for those, we would have a negative $4 million budget this year, right? So, come next year, those items go away. We start at -4 plus -1.5, 1.6. So, next year is going to be difficult no matter what. Best case scenario, it's going to be difficult. But I just want you to go eyes wide open. Next year's the real storm.
So say it's 6 million this year.
Okay.
What else we gonna cut next year? Things stay the same. You're already cutting ratcheting now. Can't cut
Well,
staff.
we start from the
What
very-
we gonna cut? How we gonna
Well-
absorb $6 million besides out of fund balance?
Well, I mean, I guess my guidance, and I'm just speaking for myself here. This is a tough question. Put me on the hot seat here. My answer to that is, if we were starting this school district from scratch, built all the buildings, we're going to open it up tomorrow, what are we going to do? Got to have a superintendent by law. Got to have principals. Got to have teachers, a certain ratio. And the ratio can change, but you got to have teachers in classrooms. And you start building from there. Got to have police officers, you know. I hope that you have to have a CFO. But, you know, every position you have to think about, you know, have to is a relative term, you know. By law, there's positions you have to have. Everything else is really, these districts that are in this situation you're talking about, there's almost nothing that's not off limits.
And I just want to bring that up, because we've had to do staff cuts, and that's tough. Just be prepared next year, that might be your own option.
So if,
Whatever decisions we make this year, is
if-
what's going, I'm not opposed to.
if we go with that 1% increase, then if I'm understanding correctly, then next year, we won't be, well, and then plus the three options. So if we go with this 1% increase plus the 3 options, so you're looking at, then in the following year, we'll be down 2 million, as opposed to the,
Okay, so let's say
2.5,
we
okay.
approve the balanced scenario here, plus the 5, what's the number, 520?
524, 525, yeah,
520 something.
yeah.
So we would have a negative $520,000 budget this year, right? That 0 plus those items.
Got it.
Fast forward to next year, we lose the 1.9 million transfer, and we lose $2.4 million.
That's, we would do a 2.4 versus the 4 or 6 million if we go with the 2%.
No.
We're not-
1.9 plus the 2.4.
Yeah,
You got two numbers.
No, it would be 1.9 plus the 5.
Okay.
fast forward to next year, you would have the negative 500,000.
Right. plus
Then
the
you would
one-
add negative
1.9.
4.3, 2.4 million, and 1.9 million.
What's, where
I've
the
been calling
two-
it 4, but it's technically,
Yeah, I'm talking, there's two numbers, even if you do the balance for next
Right.
year.
yeah.
You,
We're
it would
losing
be
two
1 point,
things.
oh, I thought we were just
Yeah.
losing the 1.9.
No, yeah, I don't have the 2.4 on here. I apologize because it's not a, it typically wouldn't be listed here, but our revenue does include it this year. So I'm making sure that you guys understand that. Maybe it would make it more sense if I had a revenue breakout. But
So
yes, those two items go away.
So you're looking at about 4.8 if we take the.
Yes, that's what I think the
Okay.
answer
Fund
is.
balance for security, the 500-something thousand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Plus
it's
these two
4.3 to
numbers,
start.
Next year, we'll be going in at a 1% raise, we'll be going in at 4.8%,
Yeah, 4.8 million.
4.8
Yeah.
million.
versus the, versus the 6
And
or
if we do the
so.
two, then we can add another 1.1 million
Yeah.
on top of the 4.8.
Yeah, it's all, exactly, that's how the math works, it's just, what combination of these things are you comfortable with? And I don't want you to come 12 months from now and look at me and say, Mike, how did we get here? Or, what happened?
When was,
The glass half full, if it weren't for those things that went our way, and some of them are relatively recent, like both of those developed in the last 60 days, probably. Early on in this budget cycle, it was rough. And we called staff together and we're like, have to kind of things only, bare minimum. It's going to be a really tough year. In a way, we had some things go our way and we could get to balance without making the kind of cuts that we might look at for next year.
And on that possible, that possible 4.8, if we give a 1% increase, next year we'll be adding open another elementary, the cost of that.
Possibly.
On top of that 4.8.
That's something, that's a
Well, I mean,
discussion
regardless, you're gonna,
2
you're.
2 years from now.
I guess my concern is dipping into that fund balance and knowing that other districts have dipped into it and it's a spiral, it's easy to, all of a sudden, we're down to 1 month. That is only my concern. I'm with Mr. Dillon. I would love to give him a 2%, but, you're in the whole 6, got a new school coming in, you're in the whole 10, 12. I'm gonna
Yeah,
just.
and I-
If we get 2 this year, then
May-
we'll start cutting staff next year.
Yeah.
when was, over the last 10 years, what have we given and as far as percentages for raises? Do you know? Like, I mean,
I don't have that history. I could put it together.
okay,
I don't have it
I'd just
handy.
like to see, because I know that we typically go between 3 and 5%, hasn't it?
No,
No,
it's
no.
been between 1.5% and 3%, but there have been a couple of years that I can think of right now. I think last year when we gave our paraprofessionals 5%, and I believe there was one other year where there was a class of employee that got either 7 or 11%. We were really trying to jump, it was paraprofessionals, but really trying to jump significantly. But we could easily put that together.
You can throw that. And
Put that
we're-
on Friday.
The only, unfortunately, the big help is just big money dollars that come from the state.
Right.
Yeah,
last year.
and keep in mind, I'm not talking about any new state dollars.
And
There might be, we might skip millions.
It's just, I mean, our company the company that I work for didn't give raises this year because it's
Yeah.
just not feasible. So and I hate looking at a teacher and saying, no, we can't give you a raise, but it's a fact of life that across the board, the economy is down, it's bad, and even in corporate, we're not giving raises. So I don't, that's
Yeah.
kind of.
And I would
Hey,
just.
all fair points.
I would just hate to think, again, yes, the students are our main concern, but we've got to look at the taxpayers. And we are responsible to be good stewards of our budget. And I know it's easy, we have this nice little pot of gold over here to start just.
Point me in the direction.
Yeah, to start just drawing down And I'm afraid in a couple of years, or, give it 2 years or so,
Yeah.
I prefer not to dip into the fund balance that much.
Do you foresee anything being different from May, from like now until, the days of what you're presenting now?
So June, we gotta.
Or
I-
June, from
Approve
June, I'm
this.
sorry.
Oh, between now and you
And
having to make a
June, yeah.
decision? No. I
Well,
mean, there
I
might be
mean-
minor adjustments, but I can't think of, the student number isn't gonna change. We're not gonna get any, I mean, it's not, there's no funding coming from the state that we might get it, we could get a grant, maybe.
What are those
Expenditures
virtual
are mostly
students
known.
worth? What are the virtual students worth to us? Like 2 million?
200 virtual students? Yeah, over
About
2 million. 2.2.
Would we know that, Jennifer,
that
before
assumes
then? Or
they
would we
were
have
all-
some application?
Yeah, and there's a lot of unknowns there. I mean, I'll give you a yes with a asterisk that says, I would think so, but I would love to.
You're not taking,
No, I know. I'm just saying if all the stars lined up and it was like.
That's a
we
good
had
question.
that By June, possibly.
get to add to this year's budget.
So it's a good question that he asked that I want to hone in on. What have we factored in on the virtual funding, or, let's say the $2 million? Right now, we're kind of holding it as a break even. If we get 200 kids and we have additional funding, and they don't see, if they're 200 new kids to us, if we just take 200 kids and they move over to the side, that's different, right? So I don't know the staffing level yet. I don't know how many kids are going to be. I don't know how many of them are our own. But so that's a good segue. That's probably the one thing that may change the most between now and June, is we'll have a clearer picture of the revenue and the staffing based on the information we have available.
Does this address the 123 that have filed for vouchers?
No, I mean, I don't know, they were there in 23, I don't even know if they're with us now. Now, we already lose some kids. It's tricky because we're losing kids every day, and we're gaining kids every day. So kids that were here last year have applied. Are they, unless they're special education, they're probably not going to get a voucher. So, I don't know.
It's very difficult. I agree with Dr. Lee on the growth projection side of it, because we're not seeing much slow down on the outside world, right? Like
Yeah.
the non-school component. So, it's just, I wish we had the crystal ball, or, we could see what the growth is gonna be like, because on the outside world, we're seeing it. It's happening right now, constantly, more so than it was last year. And so that's
Yeah.
why it's odd for the numbers, the way they are.
And that's why it's so challenging to tell you why that's happening, because it doesn't make sense. Obviously, the foremost experts in the state can't tell you exactly why, right? And they're surprised as well, and they do this for a living. So don't feel bad that, I don't feel bad because nobody can figure it out, but I know our student drop-off did stop this month. I'm hoping that's a trend. But these people that put millions and millions into these neighborhoods and these vacant developed lots and put it in infrastructure, they're not gonna walk away. They're on pause, right? They've made investments. They're gonna finish those neighborhoods. And we have a lot of them, more so than almost anybody out there. So, I wanna just,
Don't know, but would help us next year. Our goal for attendance has been 94%. If we got 95%, that'd be great. That's additional revenue.
Kid's a
If we
kid.
got 96%, that'd be amazing. So this idea of encouraging students to come to school, encouraging parents to get their kids to school, barring, illness, of course, but it means something, to us as a school district, not only to meet our academic achievement goals, which are high, but also to simply operate as an organization.
before I lose you, I do wanna say that there are 2 more slides. We haven't talked about child nutrition and debt service. I'm gonna go through them really quickly, and then we can come back to the greater topic. I just wanna make sure I don't forget to touch upon it. Child Nutrition Fund, this is the first year that we've operated in-house for some time. Currently projecting to break even. If you've been watching our month-to-month, it's very encouraging. Kudos to Rachel and Lee and the whole operations department. That's been, financially, that's my lens. Great food as well, but financially, it's been great. I can speak to that. You know, staffing has been efficient, food costs have been well managed, and that's with some investment in equipment and some of our cafeterias. So looking at the same for next year, including a couple of new positions that we kind of held off on this year and that are in the new year budget, right? And then lastly, this is maybe the biggest ray of sunshine I have as these things go. We got our preliminary values from the CAD last week. Talked about this at the board meeting. I think I got them right before I walked in here. When I did a year-over-year comparison, and I apologize for the sunlight if you're trying to read that, it's 10% preliminary versus last year certified. So that is very encouraging. That is, we are kind of an anomaly from what I'm hearing anecdotally. We don't rely on rooftops quite to the extent that some districts do, right? We have some diversification of, some corporations, commercial values, retail, and once I have the breakdown later on in this process, I'll be able to tell you where the growth is really coming from. But that's a great piece of news. I'm going to be watching, be calculating the debt service rate later. We've issued all our bonds. That's just a strong showing for our community right there. So, I apologize. So, any questions about that? It is one of your funds that you approve. So when I talk about the budget, I'm talking about food service and debt service as well. So
Food service, what, about $9 million budget?
no, sir, it's the approved budget's like 11.
Okay.
But I think it will end up probably about break even, about low 10 million, 10.3, plus or minus if I'm remembering the numbers. That's where I project us to settle out at. Of course, we had no frame of reference because we exited with a partner. They don't give us their financials, so I didn't really know what the true costs are. But it's been managed well. I was a little wary, and I'm glad to say that it's turned out pretty well. So,
One thing I don't want to get lost on, back on the certified values.
Yes, sir.
Going up 10%. That doesn't mean we get more money.
no. On the M&O
I
side,
just want- I want to make it-
we're-
That's more, I know that, but people
Yeah.
watching this meeting may not.
Well, that's a
they
good
might
point.
saying, hey, you're getting 10% more, and that's not the way that works.
Great, you set me up just like we talked about. On the M&O, side, our local tax revenues will go up, and our state values, holding everything else constant, our state revenues will go down. So yeah, we don't really, more or less, we don't really benefit from that. But to be clear, the debt service fund does. So as our tax base goes up, our ability to pay debt does go up. And so, this is just preliminary. These aren't certified. So come late July, we'll get some hard numbers. But it'll probably be at or a little lower than that number. So great territory to be in for our future tax base and our ability to build schools. So here we are. I've been updating you this weekly on the process. And really, the biggest formal steps we have left are for June related to the budget. We got to publish in the paper, do a notice, have a public hearing, and then, of course, adopt it. But going back to here, we heard from everybody in terms of input. What are your thoughts on where we go from
Hey,
here?
Mike, I just want to be clear.
Mhm.
So on the use of fund balance slide, where you have the currently 4.2 months, and then you have the 3 bullets, good cause exception,
Mhm.
adjusting years of experience, and then minimum pay grade. That full 529,000 is reflected in that final slide, or it is not?
No.
No.
Okay.
That slide was where we were last
Okay.
week. And we had
So-
1 officer. This is with 4 officers, 2 and a sergeant, but 4 FTEs instead of 1.
Mm-hmm.
Adjusting the teacher scale, 125,000, and adjusting the para pay, 100.
So this would be in addition to,
Mm-hmm.
and so, that said, if we did bullet number 3, let's say hypothetically,
Mhm.
but not number 1 and 2, 1 and 2, we're just kicking the can down the road, is
Yes.
effectively what we're doing.
Yes. If you say 1 and 2, are the bullets 1 and 2?
The bullets.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They're not in the budget. They are choices we would have to make, and they would impact the balanced budget or they would impact the bottom line here.
Okay.
So those are all options on the table. You know,
Mike,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
Well, the first one, as far as the officers go, I mean, that's still an unfunded mandate from the state to
Yes,
some extent. So, I mean, we almost don't have a choice on that one.
But to some extent, what do you mean by that? Like, we haven't, you're saying,
Well, last year, we
We're on
kicked
the
the can
hook
down the
for it?
road by filing for a good cause exception and only getting one officer. And that put us in a deficit for the number of officers we're required to have.
yeah, that's true.
And we're still not where we need to be as far as total number of officers based on what the state says you have to have.
Plus adding a new campus. Right,
2 years.
yeah.
Yeah, we haven't,
And
that
then
wasn't
the
a big
sec-
part of
well-
this presentation at this point, but ultimately, at some point, we have to make decisions about that.
And the second one goes to the quality of our educators. Right? I mean, those 10 to 20-year educators that we want to keep in the classroom, and we're just making a dent and trying to make them.
That's a one year out of
That's a-
7-year
that's a-
plan.
That's a 1 out of 7-year plan, and when we get to year 2, we don't know, but
And-
we got to start somewhere.
And to add to that, Chris, as I think about, a few board meetings back, even going through the extension that we voted on as far as, what was that, as far as being certified, the amount of certified teachers, this decision will affect that.
When does that mandate come into effect as far as having certified like, as Josh was saying, certified teachers in the core subjects?
So the extension that we were granted is for 3 years. It starts 26, 27, and so it's essentially like we have a 3-year DOI. We have 3 years, and then there is no more DOI. Like,
Okay.
there's no, that's,
Okay,
everybody has to be certified.
so,
I have not stood up this long.
You need your
Okay.
computer?
so this budget and next year, we're still under the authorized or?
Yes.
Okay. So we don't have a tremendous increase in teacher salary yet?
Correct.
When they
You're-
have to
you're
be- when
saying
they
like
have to be
once- yeah,
certified.
Everybody has to be, yes,
Yeah, okay,
correct.
okay.
I think, Mike, what you're sort of ideally would want tonight is some kind of direction on specifically the officers because of what it takes and the time frame that it takes to order vehicles and equipment. So
Very
that-
true.
So. I know
Yeah, the
that's-
others, that's a decision we could put off, but if we're gonna go find used vehicles, find the equipment, get them in hand, I have to receive by 6:30.
So do you bring 2 scenarios to the June meeting or one, or by May to the workshop, you bring 1 scenario or 2 scenarios? Do you want to, you have it nailed down by May of 1 scenario?
Well, ultimately, I would defer to yourself and the board. What do you want to see? I would say that I'm here to provide, I would ideally like to kind of consensus around 1. We could still change it. We could still deliberate. It's really, by June, we have to adopt. And I always like to propose. That way the community at least has a month there where you've proposed the budget. You've put it out there on the website. Everybody has a chance for input. If you waited till June, you're kind of making the decision on the fly. And I don't know. I have some concerns about that. But we're in unique times. So if it called for it, we could do it. But to her point, the police officers, I think, is at the start of the discussion, regardless of what we do with anything else. We have time. We don't actually adopt the comp plan until June, right?
Right.
So it is, if we're going to do it, it'd be nice the earlier we can tell staff, hey, we're going to do whatever we're going to do. It does give them all the information they need.
Well, the officer, you take that amount versus 1.1 for a 2% increase, it's not even comparable. So I mean, to go into the fund balance for the 3 things recommended is you know, that's conservative approach for those things, for those ideas. It's really, do we want to really want to go into it for the 2% increase, an additional 1.1 million, knowing what that's going to do to us next year on that budget? Or do we take a conservative approach and go with the 1% increase plus the $529,000 out of fund balance? That's really,
That's the crux of it right there.
those are some thoughts.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what are the repercussions if we don't add the additional 3 officers? Like, what happens if we don't add?
So you'll have to go back to the state, do another good cause exception. And used to be it would stay in-house and no longer stays in-house. It's y'all's decision. The way the law is written, it says the board must, the board shall find a way to have armed people on campuses. If funding or applicants is an issue that's, as far as the state says, that's not their concern. Their concern is you as a board must find a way to have armed people on campuses.
Mike, I don't know that we're officially voting on anything
No,
tonight.
sir.
Not
No.
But I think I've given you my direction is
Okay.
I would like all 3 of those things
Okay.
at a minimum. And I would lean toward the 2% midpoint increase, right?
Okay.
But, I mean, the 3 suggestions on the menu that he provided, I would say, you know, that's my direction. I like that. And I would lean toward the 2% midpoint increase. I still think that's conservative, because we're basing this budget on no student growth. When we know there are thousands of lots being developed in this town, that it's gonna require us to have more students. And, you know, it's not a hope that that happens next year. I mean, I think it's a reality that we're gonna have those more students next year. We're just basing this budget on no student growth right now.
I agree with Mr. Dillon on that.
I do need to say this, put this out there in the universe. We're also holding, we're holding growth constant. We're also holding the impact of vouchers because we don't have very many seats in this community. We talked about it previously. That is an unknown as well. So we don't have any growth, but we also have any loss to that. I don't think we will. I don't think that's the way it's going to go, but there's so many unknowns that just want to make sure that's clear as well.
So it could be the voucher, so we could almost net out to 0 on the
Possibly.
students being lost with the vouchers and
Yep.
then possibly the growth. I mean, net 0, or it could be we get, instead of 400 additional
Yeah.
students, we're only getting 200 additional students because of the vouchers.
It's absolutely true.
Okay.
I hate, as your CFO, to bring so many more questions than answers. Normally I provide data and, you know, give you some guidance, but we've got more unknowns this year than I've ever had in my whole career. So, but you guys have a pretty good handle on it. You seem to understand the challenges, and yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna say, like in Hayes County and Kyle and in other areas, I think what's gotten them in trouble is they built them thinking they'll come, and now they are not coming any longer. And so for us to set a premise that, yeah, we're building these we have all these lots, we've started all these subdivisions, and so they're going to come.
We don't know when.
We don't know when. And it could, I feel like if we go with the 2 point, and believe me, I would prefer to give our teachers a 3% raise because they deserve so much more. But we start a spiral that could end us in a place where we have to cut positions in the future. And that's even worse than only giving a 1% raise. To me, I would rather know that I have a job for sure than a raise.
So you're saying this option without any menu option?
I'm not certain on menu options. I'm just right now saying the 1% keeps us at,
And to your point, the positions and the compensation for the positions we have, it's all the same dollars, right? It's the same side, 2 different sides of the same coin, and that's what we talk about constantly is balancing those two.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna tend to agree with Kelly, but I would like to see the three options. I think all three of those options are going to be very valuable, especially the officers. So,
When you say the three options, you mean
the
on
three
this-
menus, whatever,
Okay.
yeah, the officers,
Yeah.
the increase in the teachers and the paras.
Okay.
I don't think we can do without those. And I'm going to agree with Kelly, the 1%. I am just afraid of next year's budget, that there would have to be some staff cutting.
Yeah.
And that a small community like that, I could probably look someone in the eye and say, look, I'm sorry, want to,
Yeah.
but we're going to try to save people's jobs.
So what I'm hearing, and I want to make sure this is accurate, there seems to be almost universal support for those three items. I mean, there's more support, or I guess agreement about the officers and no, okay. So let's talk about that for a second. What you want to see in May, should it include the officers, the teacher pay scale adjustment, and the bringing everybody up to $15 an hour? Those are three items that would be helpful, to, at some point, now or in May, make a decision on. But I didn't mean to put
So
words in your mouth.
without taking a vote, I think we may just give a thought. Carol expressed, I thought I heard a thought of the 1% increase in the three items.
Right.
What are we labeling those as?
Just menu choices.
Menu
Menu
choices. Okay, and I agree with Carol on that 1% and those three items. I heard Mr. Dillon, he liked the three items and the 2%, is that correct?
That's right, and we've done such a good job in the 8 years that I've been on the board of building this fund balance to where we have excess to use. In 1 year of using it and seeing where we are next year is, I think it's a prudent decision to do and a conservative decision that makes it there. And it helps our teachers, the people that we've charged with educating our students and making sure that those students are, if you've seen social media at all, you can see the teachers posting about, my kids are taking the STAR test this week, and being excited and looking forward to having good outcomes come up because of this. And the long hours are being paid off at this point. So I still think it's a conservative at 2%. Now, if we go any higher than that, probably not. But I do want to ensure that we keep our quality educators and that they have a livable wage.
Kelly, your thoughts? We're just trying to give Mike some, this is just each person's thoughts, and give Mike some direction for May.
Do you want to? You go ahead. I was just going to add, I think for your sake, Mike, and I mean, only for myself, I'm not speaking for everybody, but just who's spoken or said something, is the three, just seeing those menu options is what I think we do agree on between us three. I don't want to speak for everyone, what we're
Yeah.
saying so far.
Yeah, I think seeing them would be great, but I mean, my initial reaction is that if we're not going to give it to teachers, I mean, I'd rather kick the police officer thing down the road a little longer and apply for another, whatever it was called. Yeah, good cause exception, and get some money to our teachers. 'Cause-
So the second item is for teachers specifically. Are you in favor of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And option 1 is for the teachers, a 1%, and option 2 is for the teachers at
Sure.
2%. So everything in this thing is payroll for everybody.
Yeah.
Just a thought. So I'm hearing, so for Mike's direction, Priscilla, what you would like, some thoughts for Mike, would you like to see for May is 1 or 2%, and
1 or 2, and I guess the menu items. We keep calling menu items. It would have been really beneficial to see that tonight, just kind of all lumped in together so we could really kind of get it. I've been having to toggle back and forth to the screens to get it in my brain, but yeah, to definitely see the, what would have been, I guess, bullet points, maybe 2 and 3.
Yeah, so for the teachers, on the back half of the scale, and for the bringing up to $15 an hour for the lowest paid employees. Yeah, if it's helpful, just 300, 125, 100 on those other items. The problem is, what combination do I mix them with? I could have about 10 different scenarios, like 1% with officers, and then, you know, I was just trying to hone us in and then bring that to you in May. So I
They already
Yes,
have
so
one-
both of these
one built
scenarios
in.
include the one officer. That's what we
officers,
brought to you
those
guys
have
last
one
month
built
as options. And so if, Trustee Ruiz, if you're talking about, you know, adding the 2 bullet points, that would be $300,000 out of fund balance.
Okay,
If we did 2%, it'd be 1.4 out of
Okay.
fund balance.
But if each one of these scenarios has one officer,
Yes.
and we talked about 3.
that's where we were last time.
That's just a total of 3, not a total of 4.
3
Total
more.
of 4.
three
Yeah,
more,
total
so
4.
it's a
Total
of
4. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
3 in the sergeant.
gotcha.
And Diana, I was going to ask you, I know it was kind of brought up earlier, but you don't have to go like all history, but can you give us like a brief, like, percent raise of history? I'd like to see that, because I'm trying to figure out when the last 1% was even given. You know, and it doesn't have to
We
be
can put
answered
that
tonight.
together.
Just-
Yeah, I
ju-
think we'll
nothing
put that in
crazy.
Friday's
Okay.
Weird, yeah.
newsletter.
Yeah.
I think there may have been one year in, you know, almost 10 years of me being here that we did 1.5%. I don't know that we've done a 1%. I think 1.5 was the lowest in the time that I've been here. And no more than 3% for the vast majority of employees. There were those couple of exceptions for paraprofessionals where we.
I guess I also just, I just want to say, for the public's sake, I know this is recorded, that it really upsets me that we get $750,000 for safety and security. And we are mandated, I'm going to say it over and over and over, that it upsets me that the law requires us to do a lot of things under the guise of safety and security, and including mental health training, including all the things our officers have to do and every other employee and staff member to recognize mental health issues, to recognize substance abuse issues in students. And the state just needs to pay for that. That's ridiculous.
Great. Josh, what were your thoughts?
Mike, did that help you hone in a direction? You're looking at,
I will do my best.
So,
So Mike, we need you to go out and rob a bank.
He's
you know-
kidding, for everyone watching.
You know, I don't think this is not part of your direction here, but I do want to tell Chief, you know, I really appreciate it personally, seeing your officers not on duty and going to, you know, playoff games to go watch and support kids when they don't have kids that are, I should say they're all of them are their kids. It's very meaningful to see them in the stands like that, supporting Bastrop ISD.
Obviously, we're not taking any action tonight, and I think the ideal scenario is that we have direction on whether the equipment that we would need for officers and vehicles, but at the same time, you know, we have a board meeting on May the 12th. That's a couple of weeks from now. So, you know, I want everybody to feel really good about the thought process and the decision that you're making, and if you have more questions. So if we can't get a good semblance of a direction, you know, that's okay. We can move that to May 12th. The key thing is that if we were going to use any of this year's budget to buy some of that equipment or a vehicle, we have to receive it by June 30th. That's a requirement.
Well, I mean, and Dr. Lee, this is your first go-around as superintendent with the budget, so I think you can have that direction to do that at this point.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
The equipment's gonna be used one way or another at some point in time.
It is true.
I mean, and if we can put it in this budget year, let's put it in this budget year.
That equipment, I mean, if you purchase it now, it's not gonna sit in the parking lot, you're gonna be using it, I'm gonna assume. I mean, do you have, right now, is there one vehicle per officer? Or can we use the extra vehicles now just to,
So currently, yes, there is one officer per vehicle. We have several vehicles that are 10 years old.
Yeah.
We could, in our line of work, we have what's called pool cars. They have extra sitting around, so when a vehicle goes to the shop or is involved in an accident or whatever reason, like mine was just at Covert for the last month, having some recall, some warranty work done. And so when your vehicle's gone, you have another vehicle to drive. And so, no, we would use the ones we have. We have to order radios. The radios take anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks to come in. We have to order body cameras. We have to order the Dell Tough Books. There's equipment that we have to have, and so the radios are good for 10 years. Our watch guard systems are good for 10 years. So if we had to hold them for an extra year, they'd be held for an extra year. But it's also, if an officer's radio goes down, we have an extra that would be available to them, so.
so it would be purchasing equipment now, just in case?
Yes.
Yeah, I have no objections to do that. I mean, I'd rather have a vehicle on standby, so it is used, or a radio, as
Yeah.
opposed to being without.
No, I think it's a good use of funds either way.
Yeah, I agree.
Won't go bad, won't go unused. So we'll proceed with that. And that'll give us some flexibility depending on what comes out of our future meetings. Great. Well, that's all that I had in terms of materials to present. Happy to answer any questions. And if you have questions after, I know there's some data requests that we'll get to you. And then I'll try to work into the next meeting as well.
I guess it would depend on how quick we can get the figures.
Yeah, the things that are requested tonight, we can get to you tomorrow. There's no reason in May, at our May meeting, we couldn't have budget discussions. I can provide an update if I have, I won't have much different information, but if there's any pertinent updates, I can provide it and we can, have discussion. It won't be in a workshop-like setting, but we have May.
So here's what June will look like right now. You'll have scenario, you'll have 1%, 2%, the three things we discussed out of fund balance. Somebody's gonna make a motion. Somebody's gonna, possibly if it gets seconded, majority's gonna pass that scenario. In the past, we haven't just left it open to, we don't know what's gonna be made a motion or a seconded. That's what Mike's asking for, to kind of narrow this down to where we are wanting to go. I know there's still some information that this board is needing. That's why I asked, do we need to have another workshop to discuss this, to be courtesy, or, to listen to everybody, get input, and think about this?
Well, I think, too, what might help is if we essentially have two recommendations to consider from the administration at this point. It might be helpful if we had, what is administration ultimately going to propose to us too? And are we going to adjust it?
Yeah, I was
right?
just about to say that.
So we do have, I think what tonight's workshop is to, hey, let's talk about it, let's give the administration direction, let them go back. and make an official proposal or recommendation for, you know, and if it's ready in May, that's great. We won't vote on it till June, but, you know, and then, but if it needs to be adjusted in May or more direction given, we can do that too. I don't know that another workshop is going to be necessary to do that.
Because there are still so many unknowns, I mean, even, I guess what's blowing my mind right now is the 15% cuts that you've, you know, decided across the board are appropriate. But then what does that look like next year, you know, for us on either of these scenarios? So.
There's not a whole
then
lot
there's-
of meat on the bone there
Yeah,
down the road. I mean, they're running pretty lean. I mean, it starts, if that, you know, it's hard. And there's just not a whole lot there that is truly discretionary if you think about it.
And one thought that I just meant, not to cut Mr. Dillon off a while ago, but this, if we go with option 2 on the 2%, that 1.1 is not a 1-year amount out of fund balance. That's going to be next year. It's going to be, especially if we're going into a $4 or $6 million deficit, it's going to keep coming out. So, you know, even those other 3 things that we're looking at as well. So
It's definitely the starting point.
it's a starting
If we-
point, right? And I think
Holding everything
that's,
constant, if we don't get additional funding in next session, they seem to have an appetite for giving us additional special education funding, so that's positive, but we'll have other expenses that we're, you know, we're battling as well. You know, transportation goes up every year and, you know, cost of everything. So, to your point about the administrative recommendation, we're happy to do that. You know, we'll come back with that in May if you'd like. I just want you to be clear, we publish in early June, so if I'm going to publish the budget that we're going to propose to adopt, we can still make a change in June. It just, ideally, you would want to, for the community's sake, propose what you're going to adopt, so that, you know.
Well, and
Can I-
so-
can
so
I-
let me just,
yeah, go ahead.
I want to simple this down for my own mind, I think. We have 50 million in fund balance.
Yes, sir.
Under base scenario 1% midpoint, we're losing 4.3 essentially out of fund balance on that one. In scenario 2, we'd be losing 5.4 thereabouts, or 6 total.
No, we lose
For next
nothing
year-
out of,
for next year when
for
we-
next year, not,
No, yeah, that's what I mean. I'm talking
no,
about-
what we approve, we would lose nothing.
Well, no, I'm saying.
out of
but,
scenario
for-
1.
For next year, we would
Fast
lose.
forward.
Fast forward,
Yeah.
not
years.
for 27,
Yeah,
28.
it's the 4.3,
4.3 and
maybe the
20
500,000, plus if we do the 1.1, it's those 3 added together.
Right, so it's 4.8 essentially, and 5.9 is the difference. Either way, 27, 28, there's a hit to fund balance if we don't get any more revenue.
And we take no action.
And we take no other
Next-
action.
Yeah, we're going to have some
I just want,
difficulties.
that's what I wanted to be sure, because there's, the compound interest part of this, where we lose 4.8, 27, 28, or 5.9, is the.
Yeah,
is
there's
the
definitely
question.
some, I mean, I can assure you, we're not going to recommend a budget that, you know, that much of a deficit, I wouldn't think, just because that starts to get very concerning. This territory is much different than $5 million, right? So we would have to make some changes programmatically with staffing. I don't think there'd be any department that's not going to be affected if we want to, if we're in that situation and we get no new funding, that caveat, then yeah, we're going to have to either grow out of, you know, or make some painful decisions. But we're no different than anybody else. That's exactly what you're reading in the paper. And we're just a little better situation because of where the decisions we made for years leading up to this. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Can a budget be modified? Say that all of a sudden we have
It's amended all the time.
explosive growth, and we have, I'm just gonna make this up, 800 more students or 500 more enrolled, and we're not flat, and we approve the budget in June. Can we come back in August and say, hey, take that 1% increase to 2%?
Absolutely.
Where you can legally do that.
You can legally amend it every time you meet.
That's, I mean, it's a wish, which is, we'll pray for more kids.
I
and
hope that's a
get
problem we
our,
have. I will gladly
get our
help you spend
attendance
the-
from 94 to back to 96, and yes, but I'm just, you know, that gives everybody working hand in hand.
Yeah, we're not, if we were in that situation, that's a great problem to have, and happy to entertain that discussion if that happens.
Maybe
I hope
we-
the
we
virtual
urge the
program is a
pro-
huge hit as well.
Maybe we urge the legislature to budget according to enrollment as opposed to attendance.
That would be great. I'll take, it's all $1 to me, so I'll fully fund special education.
Right.
That's a bigger loss than safety and security, overall, so,
Priscilla, Josh, anybody kind of, any other thoughts or? Kelly? Well, good luck with all that, Dr. Lee and
Good luck,
Mike, yeah.
Good luck, Mike.
I do have one thing to say, and that is that I want our teachers to understand that no matter what we decide as far as a raise, we firmly believe that they do an amazing job. And it is always our desire to give them as big a raise as possible, but still do our job. And that's never an easy decision, but our confidence in our teachers has never wavered, and in the staff. So we appreciate everything that you do.
absolutely.
I agree 100%.
No doubt.
I
Any other,
appreciate the conversation. I'm sorry, I didn't
No,
mean to
go
interrupt
ahead.
you. I was just gonna say, I appreciate it. I know this is tough territory, and you guys have had, we put you through the ringer tonight, but, I do appreciate the input. It really does help.
any other thought, Mike, do you have anything else to present, Mr. White? Okay, any other questions or thoughts for Mr. White? All right, any objections to adjourning this meeting? If there are none, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.